You're helping a disabled vet sounds like a special challenge. What can you tell us about your husband's path forward? What happened to him and what's happened since then?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to. When I met my husband, he was just getting out of the Marine Corps. You know, he had a air about him where he has these muscles and he's pretty, very, very confident. And he then became a police officer when he was transitioning out of the Marine Corps. He went into the law enforcement field, which I was very familiar with. My grandfather was a retired law enforcement police officer himself in Flint, Michigan. My father, he was on the mounted unit in Genesee County of Michigan. And so I knew, a little bit about police work. I thought that was great. It was amazing. You know, we ended up starting a family, had a beautiful home in Michigan on 30 acres, and just a beautiful life. 9/11 happened, and he started being called to join the military again. Unfortunately, he was too old to go back into the Marines full time, so he ended up joining the Army full time. And from there, he just went in, head first. He was a paratrooper there because in recon Marines, he did, jumping out of the airplanes and the helicopters and all that stuff. So he still wanted something high speed. So he joined the Army as a Cav Scout. Quickly deployed to help with Hurricane Katrina cleanup, and then deployed to Iraq, and that was in 2006. Right away, within the first couple of months here, let's see, he deployed in August 2006, and in October, I believe it was, off the top of my head. Gosh, I should remember this, but it's been a while. He unfortunately lost his truck driver, was killed. His truck commander, TC is what they call it. And my friend Katie lost her husband within 3 days of each other. That happened. Ken came home on what they call R&R. We went to both of those funerals. The guys ended up being buried right next to each other. And then he went back to Iraq for another year or so. During that time, he was wounded in May of 2007. He stayed there while he finished the mission with the guys. At that point, they had lost so many, and some of them were coming back with amputees. He stayed there. He did suffer a head injury. It was documented when it happened. An IED, or basically an explosive, went off underneath the seat of his vehicle. As they were pulling him out, they hit another one. And so there was a couple right there in a row. It did knock him out. He had blood coming out of his ears. The medic documented it. He did receive a Purple Heart for that. But it wasn't until he came home that we really understood the gravity of his injuries the first day that he was home. And I can pause there because I know I just gave you a lot.
Well, you're rolling, but as you know, I'm the son of a long-term vet and very close to the military. And it sounds like Ken has the Marine attitude of, you charge in there and you go get him and working, even though he in very dangerous conditions. So he gets home. Then what happens?
Mhm. Yeah, so the first day that he was home, we were all excited. My parents were over. We made a big dinner. We grilled outside on the grill. And within an hour after we ate, he says, "When are we having dinner?" And I thought, okay,
Oh,
shell shock, probably tired, exhausted. I mean, they just came back from this horrid deployment. He just needs to relax and unwind a little bit. But unfortunately, that night he had a seizure while he's sleeping. It woke me up, and it just kind of escalated from there. So, being the kind of person that I am, I'm like, you need to talk to your chain of command. You have to go to the doctor. Like, this is crazy. So he wasn't really fond of wanting to do that himself, but I was like, you just need to go get help. So he did. He went, they sent him to a neurologist, and right away that neurologist diagnosed him with a traumatic brain injury. And he stayed in the military from the time that he got home from that deployment until 2010, when they medically retired him specifically and solely for the purpose of medical treatment. So he had had all sorts of things going on. He had hearing loss, he had brain injury, which caused him to have uh, vestibular problems, so problems with gait and walking, and he couldn't remember how to sign his name when he came home. And in fact, he still doesn't sign his name, he just scribbles it. But there's some things that just don't matter. Doctors have just as bad a handwriting. So, when he came home at that point, we were just happy to have him home. The kids were thrilled to have him home. The day he left for his deployment, some of the neighborhood kids said, "Your dad's going to die in war because that's what soldiers do." And so for that 15 months that he was gone, the kids couldn't sleep very well either. They were going through their own trauma of having a dad that's not around. And then when he comes back, the kids are seeing his injuries as well. And, they went through a lot too as kids. Their dad would say things like, "Who left the clothes in the dryer?" "He left the clothes in the dryer." So some things, but again, some things didn't matter and some things were difficult.
And how is he now?
So he still has residuals of brain injury. He still has
Mhm.
that short-term memory loss. He still, I guess the biggest thing to understand is as a military family who's been through something like this, and anybody who has an injury or a wound, it's been so long that we get used to things in doing things the way that we do to tailor to his life. It becomes our new normal or our second normal.
Yes, I understand. You adapt to it, but then when you get out in public, the public sometimes is not as sensitive to why somebody is doing things.
Hmm.
And by the way, tell Ken on the signature, I have stopped signing my name. Fortunately, when I could still sign my name, I made a copy of it. And I can drop it into letters. And so I can have this beautiful signature. But I actually personally signed a check last night, and it's illegible. But
Hmm.
apparently, my local credit union sees my legible signature. So my case is certainly not military related. I just have arthritis in my hands and all that. So tell Ken to hang in there. There's a lot of us who can't write our name anymore,
Well,
but I'm sure it'll work out.
yeah, a few years ago, he went for brain stem cell therapy. And
Yes.
they told us within a year, you might start noticing something different with yourself. Maybe you'll start feeling better or something. Well, about a year later, he went to what's it called? The bariatric chamber treatment.
Hmm.
Um, and the hyperbaric treatment, that's it, not the other one, that's a weight loss. He didn't do the weight loss. So he went to this process, and when he was there was another soldier who said, "Hey, Ken, do you want to paint something?" And Ken's like, "Nah, dude, I don't paint." And he said, "Give it a try, just give it a try." And he did. And you would not believe that Ken can paint now. The doctor, the neurologist at Fort Bragg said, within about 5 years, you could very well be in a vegetative state. We found out that statement was because of the prescription side effects that he was having. That was another story for
Uh,
another day. He paints, he and has sketches that he puts out on his Instagram. That's all he does now. He literally just sits and paints a lot of paintings.
well, that's cool. Well, maybe you can
Mhm.
find a vet event where people be interested in supporting that and buying the paintings. I'm a big fan of original art, by the way. We here at my office in Houston, we actually display a lot of original artwork that I've collected over the years. So it's certainly something a lot of American families are interested in. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.